I don't know about you, but I am not ready for the summer. I am not ready for the football to go away, guys. What a season it has been. And thankfully, even though it is the summer and it is the European off-season, the football doesn't need to go away for us. The football does not go away for Sorare scouts and managers all over the world. We've still got all the Asian football, North, Central, South America. All that stuff is kicking off. We do have international qualification for Euro 2024 about to kick off as well in this international break that we're about to come into. But like we spoke about on the channel last week, Sorare dropped the bombshell that yet again we are going to get the Euro Under-21 competition covered. And this summer, it is legit the most exciting tournament for me on Sorare this season. It trumps the World Cup. The domestic season is what it is. It doesn't trump that. But in terms of a one-off competition, I'm really excited about it. I've got a few cards in it, and I want to talk about the 3 different ways that everyone can win out of Euro Under-21s on Sorare, no matter what your budget and no matter what the level of the game you're playing in. At any point in the video, if you laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel, share and retweet and all that good stuff, guys. Now, the squads have all been named. There's been a few little adjustments here and there, so if you are unsure on any particular players, just jump onto Twitter, search their name, and you'll be able to find out quite quickly if there has been any last-minute adjustments. But me and Harry Trades got together and we did a bumper breakdown of the tournament, fixtures, favourites, golden boot potential, all that good stuff. I'll link that video in the description of this one if that's the sort of thing you're after. But this video today, I want to talk about the specific strategies, the specific ways where any Sorare scout and manager from around the world can tap in to the Euro Under-21 competition and make their club, make their strategy stronger, better, smarter for the new European season. And the first one is the most obvious one, and that is, of course, identifying absolutely elite talent. Now, as we all know, European football is the epicenter of world football. It's where the biggest and best players not only play, but are developed. The European nations from top to bottom are really the top dominant nations in global football, and seeing the up-and-coming wonder kids from lots of different areas. And a tournament like this has a lot of national pride attached to it for virtually every nation involved. What I seen in this tournament last time did really shed a little bit of a light into the future of how the careers of some players would go to pan out. The video I spoke about last week was talking quite a lot about the Germany team that I followed and eventually won the last Euro Under-21s. And in particular, the one that really jumps out to me about that tournament is Nico Schlotterbeck. And the reason he stands out in my mind is because, of course, as we look at his scores, he's been on to have a fantastic career, okay? But even for me, I was very new to Sorare, maybe like you, when this tournament was on last time. And even for myself, I like to think I'm quite well read across world football, as it were. I was very snobbish on this one, and it really does still irk me to this day that I was. Way back when, he was currently at Union Berlin, and these were his kind of scores. He just transferred to Freiburg at the point of this tournament. So looking at him coming into the tournament, he didn't really have much going for him in terms of the Union Berlin career that he'd had. He'd had a few good scores, like right at the bottom, see here. But since then, he hadn't done anything to really stand out. The tournament itself, he was a clear standout. And, you know, this was his career at Berlin, and he was moving to Freiburg, and I just kind of wrote that off as, yeah, he's a really great player to watch, but SO5-wise, maybe it's not quite there for him. Even though my eyes told me, looking at him, he is a clear, amazing central defender. This Germany team is really good, and he looks like one of the best players. And in the team as well, there was some star names, Adeyemi, Wirtz, Musiala, etc., etc. But as you'll probably know from the time as soon as he shows up in Freiburg, a decent, you know, better team than Union Berlin at this point in time. And it was very clear to see very quickly his scores made a dramatic improvement on that transfer. Now, coming into this European tournament, if I was to say to you, try and find a Schlotterbeck, you might have thought, duh, everyone else will see him. But Schlotterbeck, until he played for Freiburg, was slept on. This game week here, 224 to 226, where he did back-to-back 100s, is when he showed up. That was early mid-December 2021. This is Schlotterbeck's price graph over the entire time his card has been on Sorare, and that tournament was quickly followed on by when the cards were released. So he didn't have much time, he didn't have any time as a Union Berlin card necessarily, but from when he came out at Freiburg, he did have a little bit of hype around him from that tournament, don't get me wrong, but it was very much like at this time, forget the ETH amounts because ETH was totally different. But for an under 23 starting defender in the Bundesliga, this is not out of any, this is a bang average guy at the time with a bit of potential upside because of the Germany win. But as soon as he goes and he puts those two back-to-back 100s in January, you can see his price triples. more than so. And then from there, obviously, he's went on and had a stellar career. He's transferred to Borussia Dortmund, and he's been a top operator. He's also picked up some injuries along the way. And in terms of Ethereum, these just show you a wee bit of the trend of upwards and stuff, but there is also the pound notes kind of part of it as well, which is just a little bit different because Ethereum as a price does move itself. Now, there's the potential for any Sorare scouting manager, for any scarcity, for any budget, to find a Schlotterbeck in here. A guy that does not play for a stellar team, a guy that doesn't have a huge pedigree that all the Scout Wonder Kid pages are looking for. But when you watch them and you see them in this tournament, you know they're absolutely top shelf. Now, I don't doubt for a second if I was to have followed up on Schlotterbeck a bit better, if I'd watched him post-tournament, post-Euro under-21 victory, and I seen the scores he was starting to collect before that double 100s happened, some okay scores, but a 71, an 80, a 75, a 61, a 64, some really good scores against Bayern, against Leipzig, against Wolfsburg in a clean sheet victory, the 80 and a 1-1 draw. Very good promise there. Had I followed up on this a bit better and had I actually watched him during this time, I think I would have been wholeheartedly convinced that the form I've seen in that Euro under-21 tournament had indeed translated into the Bundesliga. And although, his price would have began to rise with these good scores, of course it would have, it really did peak out here on this double 100 game week score, if that makes sense. And by that time, the cat is out the bag. Your diligence, your work, your scouting on finding an elite guy who's up and coming and is off the radars of the whales and the big power players in the community is gone. Now, please do not write off the ability to spot somebody like that in this tournament. I'm not saying it'll definitely happen. It sounds like an obvious part to start the video, but I just wanted to highlight, don't write it off, because Sorare now, particularly if you're at limiteds and rares, if you could get a Schlotterbeck when he's undervalued, and I say Schlotterbeck, undervalued, underappreciated in the market, you need cards like that to really hit big and hit the power cards in the leaderboard. So you want to get these guys for as cheap as possible, and that's before everyone else clicks on to how good they are, of course. The second one is goalkeepers, okay? Now, this sounds a bit obvious to start off with because young goalkeepers play for longer, goalkeepers are a pain in the ass on Sorare, everything else, right? It's pretty obvious. Now, there's details to this spot because every squad has 3 goalkeepers, and in the group stages, because of the way the fixtures are going to go, I would be very surprised if one goalkeeper plays the entire tournament for any country in particular. I can't remember exactly how it worked with Germany, but I know all 3 keepers featured. I can't remember who they were, but one of them had a really good pedigree and he didn't play the whole tournament. He had a Sorare card, didn't play the whole tournament. It was Damen, who didn't have a card at the time and was like 20, really old for an under-21. I forget who the other one was, but all 3 of them featured in the tournament, and I would not rule that out for a lot of the bigger, more developed nations in this tournament. And even seeing one of these goalkeepers in action for a game might tell you everything you need to know to pick that guy up as your DNP keeper for training for now. But you've seen him play in a really good level, in a really good situation, and you can see he's actually a really good goalkeeper, and you maybe wait then for a loan to materialise or whatever it is. But again, very similarly to what I was talking about with the Schlotterbeck example, goalkeepers, you always want to be buying them for as cheap as possible, and they're always cheaper as a backup, a number 2 or a number 3, compared to being a number 1. And because they play for so long, my attitude to goalkeepers is always buy them and bank them if you can. Every goalkeeper that I plan on playing in SO5 Fantasy Football is a hand-picked player. I don't really care what team they're in or what defence they're in. It's about the goalkeeper individual. I need to believe in them if I'm going to be playing them in my team. Even guys like T&Cs, who I'll be calling upon for this under-21 tournament that we're talking about, was the DNP youth goalkeeper at Barca that I bought with no idea of him getting any of this utility, which is a little bit of a bonus. If he does well, maybe he gets a loan or a transfer, that would be great. But it's that kind of idea where you can get these guys in that are going to be your training keeper, and they can come good at some point. But I say for me, with guys like All Black, and regular viewers of the channel have heard this 1,000 times, so I'm sorry. Sean Johnson, Soria, Skorupski, these guys are money no option goalkeepers for me. If I had all the money in the world or no money in the world or whatever, these are the goalkeepers I would still have on my hit list. These are the guys I would want. Guys that are guaranteed number 1s for now. And as I see it, and it's always your opinion on your players and your club and who you want to bring in, but as I see it, their future is quite well set out for being solid number 1s for the foreseeable future for me. And I feel that way because I've watched them play. I know what they are as a goalkeeper. I know what they're about. Goalkeeper is one of the most frustrating cards, one of the most frustrating positions in Sorare and in football. And really getting it right from Sorare in a couple of perspectives. Number 1, they're reliable, but they can be good, because there's nothing worse than buying a keeper if a goalkeeper's actually bad, it's even if they play, it won't last long. Nobody wants a bad goalkeeper. So don't underestimate catching some of these rotation keepers in action. You might not get utility out of them in this tournament. That's not the point. The point is to make your club better for the new season coming forward. And I say, whether they get a loan or not is irrelevant. If you get them cheap enough and they play a part in training in your club, when they do come good, like maybe my boy Trubin here, who's been a blue X at Shakhtar, only plays Europa League or Champions League. Maybe he gets a transfer this summer. I've had to wait a long time for that one to pay in, but that's the kind of idea that we're after here. But again, Trubin's a great example. I've seen him play a number of times because of the way you can see him. And I've got the apps. I've always had, I've never been tempted to, I've listed him a few times probably, but I've never really been motivated to like, oh, get this guy out of here. And it's because I've seen him play. I know he's a quality goalkeeper. And teams are always going to be interested in quality goalkeepers. And before we get to the third and final one, I plan on live streaming watch-along style as much of this under-21 tournament as, is going to be fun. Hopefully once we've got cards in, ones at the end of the game week, different bits and pieces. I plan on watching them all and getting stuck in as much as possible. And this tournament for me, I never really engaged with it much last time in terms of I've got to go and get a team and a stack. And fair enough, I'm back in Spain to go far in this one. But this tournament on Sorare, it's not really about the actual utility. It's more just about the fun, the scouting element. And for me, this Euro Under 21 really is like the Sorare Managers World Cup, if that makes sense. These are the players we want to see in tournament football and who we want to see their careers blossom by holding their cards and playing them in fantasy football. So I'll be doing a bit of a watch along. And thanks to the newest sponsor on the channel, we can get involved in this tournament in more than one way. And how good is this? The guys at QuinnBet have enhanced their UK welcome offer where you can get a free bet up to £35. It's for new customers that sign up only. You can check out the full terms and conditions on the website quinnbet.com or by clicking on the link in the description of this video and in the pinned comment. By clicking on that link and signing up directly, you support all the content here at the channel, Quinny 3001, and I thank you in advance if you do so. It looks really impressive to me. It's 18 plus, and remember folks, always gamble responsibly. And the third and final one, guys, it's my favourite one to try and find, is the underscored. Okay, now what do I mean by that? The underscored are those guys that when you watch them play, again, maybe like Schlotterbeck, they look really good, but their scores don't show up. The scores don't translate over, and sometimes that is actually a bad thing. But in this kind of situation, in this tournament, depending on what team and what player we're talking about, that could be great. Now, these are the groups that we have, okay? Now, when a team concedes a goal, depending on what position in the pitch we're talking about, you're losing a lot of Sorare points. If you get booked, you're going to lose a couple of points. If you commit fouls, you're going to lose a couple of points. So if you're a good player and you are, I don't know, let's say in that Norway or Switzerland team, potentially maybe even the Croatia or Ukraine team, and I'd even be very interested to see how all the bigger nations that we probably have a bit more faith in, to see how their players score. But some of the ones that are maybe a bit more in the periphery are the ones that this really applies to, because they could play very well. They might do fantastic. They might actually score a lot of Sorare points, but if they concede 3 goals and get booked and lose a couple of duels or something like that, if it's a defender card, they're going to be absolutely shredded. But if you've watched them and you've seen something in them, I don't always let the Sorare score go against them for me, especially if it is external circumstances that go against them. Like if you're playing in midfield, you're going to lose 2 points for every goal you concede, and if your team are woeful at the back and you've got a terrible goalkeeper, or you turn up against France and they scud you 5-0, then you're going to lose 10 points for those goals going in. Never mind everything else that'll happen as a result of that in the match. You're being dominated, you're giving away fouls and free kicks and losing possession, etc. But sometimes you watch those games and those players, you're like, wow, he bailed his team out, he was everywhere, he done everything, and sometimes the score doesn't truly reflect their actual output. If you put the 10 points back on, if it was a 0-0 draw, for example, maybe remove the yellow card, the difference, the swing in some of these points can play quite a big difference. Now, that's not to justify someone as becoming a good Sorare scorer or whatever, but it's important to understand what their score is, why you thought they looked like they played amazing, and why the score is only 47 and not 62. Now, if it's this kind of scenario that I'm discussing and they've walked out with a 29 rather than a 42 or something like that, then it's not really a good thing to be watching. Maybe we watch, but we're a bit more cautious. It's maybe not something we want to get as excited about, potentially. So again, even looking at Schlotterbeck, if I'd watched him in the first 3 games of the Bundesliga, I would even be looking at this 43 and thinking, well, if they did keep the clean sheet here, the extra 10 points minus the goal. The goal conceded is minus 4 points, and he's made a wee foul as well. So there's maybe an argument to say on another day, that performance he put in, if it wasn't Borussia Dortmund, it was somebody that didn't get the goal, it would be an additional 16 points, top of a 43 is a 58, which is not too shabby. So again, had I just followed this guy on for a little bit, I could have seen some justification even here in these scores to think this guy's actually a pretty solid operator. Might not have had the foresight to see the double 100s coming and that kind of thing. But even here, again, we have a similar situation to that Dortmund game where it's a 2-1 win. Score is a bit better on this one. He's obviously improved. But again, imagine he got away. They were at home against Hertha Berlin. Same kind of game, but they're at home. So maybe they keep the clean sheet. An additional 12 points goes your way, 65. Again, when you actually see what's happening with the scores here, for a good player, you can make this justification for any player probably if you really pushed it far enough. But when you've watched them and then you're seeing what's happening and, why did they, I thought the guy played really well against Borussia Dortmund. 43 is not really that great. Well, he lost 16 points for the foul and losing the clean sheet basically. So that's the difference between the score being in green and looking quite good or being amber. So players that get underscored, maybe they're on your radar already, maybe you know their name, maybe you're watching them, but ones that definitely get underscored when you're watching them, they maybe look like a bit of a player, they are the ones as well to have another little look at and another little scratch underneath the surface, because again, a lot of people will just see the bad scores and stay away from them. But in this Euro Under-21 tournament, they're all wonder kids, they're all young, up-and-coming talent, they've got tons of room for development and progression, never mind transfers, loans, permanent or otherwise. And Sorare is about good football players. They might not be brilliant for Sorare fantasy football the minute you buy them, but as long as you're buying good players that can do good scoreable actions, particularly ones that you've seen play football and you believe in, then that's the name of the game. And if we find enough of those players, we're going to have some great teams getting built. Can't wait for this tournament to start next week. I hope you'll join me for any of the content that we do around it. Don't forget to drop a comment and let me know your thoughts on this video. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.